So, oh, here we go. Welcome to Porch Play Chat, sponsored by the American Association for Promoting the Child's Right to Play, or a shorter title is IPA-USA. IPA-USA is the USA affiliate of the International Play Association. Go to IPAworld.org to find out more about all the countries that are involved in IPA World, and go to IPAUSA.org to find out all about your USA affiliate. My name is Deb Lawrence, and I'm the president of IPA. And as part of our efforts to advocate for play, we started these Porch Play Chats, which are conversations with folks who are just as passionate about play as we are. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel and our Facebook page, which you can do from our website in that top upper right corner, magically on Monday mornings, a new Porch Play Chat appears in your feed. And that way you can always stay up to date with all the people who are as passionate about play as we hope you are. Joining me today is Richard Cohen.
Hello.
Hello. Richard's been a proud member of the early childhood profession for almost 40 years. He's been an infant and toddler teacher, a preschool teacher, a kindergarten teacher, and a center director. We really share the same background. He has served in national and international early childhood leadership positions and now happily teaches at a community college in Connecticut. Again, we have followed the same career path.
That's right.
Richard also has a very large social media following on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And so you should get into those, and he's going to send me those links so that you can join his pages. So Richard's topic today is down with education, up with play.
Yes.
Yes. And so he said that he had a recent epiphany about education, and he'd like to tell us all about that epiphany. So let's go. This sounds very interesting.
All right. Well, actually, before we get into that, I just wanted to say, Deb, how much I enjoy chatting with you. Mm-hmm. I noticed it looks like you have a fence behind you.
Oh, no, I don't have a fence behind me. This is a virtual porch because I'm currently in my basement.
Oh, well, the lovely illusion.
Thank you. I want that porch.
Yes. Well, I wondered about the fence because I was sitting, as you were speaking, I was thinking, when Deb and I chat, I feel like we're two neighbors who have known each other a very long time, standing on either side of our fence between our yards, just chattering about the world.
Yeah.
And how enjoyable that is. So thank you for having me.
Well, I'm always so happy with the conversation because I think we truly have followed the same path.
Yeah.
And
today I'm looking forward. I don't have anything. It's not like a lecture. I really want a conversation because I know that I really think you're going to have some strong opinions about what I'm about to share.
Great. Let's do it.
All right. So, a few weeks ago, I had an epiphany. And what led up to that epiphany was I was getting increasingly frustrated with the standardization of our field, the use of standards as requirements that young children have to meet in order to get to the next level, kindergarten, so that they can accomplish all those things so they can be ready for first grade. And how suddenly that fast moving train, it has not suddenly, it's for a long time, it's made its way down into our world of early childhood education and how disturbing that is. And the possible coming of funding for universal pre-K.
Oh, scares me to death.
Yeah. And I imagine we'll talk about, there may be some people watching this that are like, that it's a wonderful thing. Why are you scared? So I'm sure you and I will weave that into our conversation because I'm scared. I'm more angry than scared at this moment because of this sort of epiphany I had. It's just such a, it's the wrong direction that we need to be going in favor of young children. And so, as you mentioned earlier, I have the social media presence. I started it in 2013. And it's been called Zen and the Art of Early Childhood Education, which was my take back then on Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Do you remember that? It was a wonderful book of the 60s about being present for whatever
Oh,
you're doing, even if you're just fixing your motorcycle.
mm,
And so I sort of, that was always my experience of early childhood. And so I applied it there. But I had this epiphany. I was staring at the title of it and I looked at the word education and I suddenly thought, why is that word even in there?
mhm,
It's not the most important thing I care about. It's in almost every job title I've ever had. You and
mhm,
I are professors at community colleges. I'm a program coordinator as well. And
mhm.
I imagine yours is, my department is called Early Childhood Education.
Yep.
And I started looking around at the predominance of that phrase, ECE, and the acronym ECE, and started pondering that word education and thinking, why do we have so much energy? Why have we made that the most important thing for the first 5 years of life, education?
Mhm,
And as I was chatting with Heather Burnt Santee on that Early Childhood Nerd,
mhm,
she was reminding me that our national association is,
mhm,
well, I had said to her, it's even in the name of our national association, the National Association for the Education of Young Children.
mhm,
And she pointed out that it's not the National Association for Young Children, it's the Association for Education.
mhm,
And I thought, wow, that is really messed up. Why is
mhm,
that the link to young children? Why is that our be all end all goal?
mhm.
And I think the other thing that got me really frustrated and angry when this epiphany occurred to me was I was trying to answer someone's question about play-based learning.
Oh God. Oh yeah. Oh, those are like three dirty words right there.
Well, all of it. I've always hated it, but I never realized why until this light bulb lit up for me. And
Mhm,
I thought, why is play a means to an end? Why is it a medium we're using toward education? Why isn't play the end?
mhm,
We're sitting here in 2022. We have now scads of research around the neurology of the brain in the first 5 years. We know what we have now lots of research on what are the foundational experiences that young children need for
mhm,
future thriving throughout their lives.
mhm,
Education isn't even on that list. Why is that? Why is everything in our field framed around that word?
mhm.
And so I removed it from my social media. After 13 years, I took the word education out. It's now just called Zen and the Art of Early Childhood. And I'm no longer going to type ECE. I'm just going to type EC.
Mhm.
Hearing myself say that, all of that sounds like silly, surfacey things to do. Just, oh, I'm going to change the name of my Facebook page or whatever. But it's really goes deeper than that for me. It was really a realization that of just how misguided the early childhood field has been since the time I arrived in it in the mid 80s.
Well, I have some thoughts
Yeah, go
about
ahead.
why,
Yes,
right?
please. Yep.
I think my belief is that we felt like in order to earn any credibility in the
Right.
world, right,
Yeah.
we needed to say that we were doing something, even though we were doing a lot of somethings. It was the education piece that we thought might earn us some additional credibility, which it did not,
Right. Correct.
right? How
Didn't earn
many?
us higher wages.
No, no, nothing. We got nothing out of
We
that.
had nothing to show for it.
And and we compromised, I think, our values when we add that word. Because even though children are thriving in environments where they have the ability to initiate their own play and for a facilitator to follow their interests and to, you know, describe what they're doing or extend their learning or not to interrupt at all,
Right.
we're doing a lot. But when they hear that word education, I know you fight it all the time. I fight it all the time. To teachers, literacy is letters, right? Because they need to learn their letters and they need to write their name and they need to be able to add and subtract. I'm like, what are what?
Right.
What are you thinking? And it's that education word that gets them to think about their own experiences in education. And so we're harming ourselves by using that word. Now,
Yeah, we're harming young children.
and we're
Our
definitely
future
harming
citizens.
young children. Yeah. And we're not helping our profession at all, right? We need to be true and honest to what our role is in early childhood. And I think
And
that,
proud and
and proud
celebratory of it.
Absolutely. I always tell, early childhood students, you are providing the foundational experiences that children will remember forever. And it's not ABCs are making everybody sit in circle and listen to the story. That's not what it's about. It's about building relationships and careful observation and picking up on children's interests and following children's lead. It's not about teaching. And that is a aha moment for them. But again, that education word in their degree program or their pre-K to whatever grade it is, teacher certification,
Or in their job title.
Makes them feel like they're a professional instead of recognizing that they're an early childhood specialist, right? You're a specialist.
Oh, I like that term.
Yeah, it's much better than a teacher.
Right.
And when you say facilitator, I think sometimes they feel like they're not doing anything. But if you're an early childhood specialist, then you are firmly grounded in what young children need and what they thrive on in an early childhood classroom. Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you that education word has done more harm to us and to children.
Yeah.
And to their families.
It took me this long to realize, and to their families. It took me this long to realize. I mean, I've always understood it in my bones, but it hadn't made its way to my brain, and like my frontal cortex to really understand the damage until recently. I do want to go back one moment. You just said a lot, and I'm so grateful for it. But there was something you said at the very beginning when you began speaking that I want to clarify for your audience. You said that what we do is I'm not going to say it exactly the way you said it, that we help children have experiences that they'll remember for the rest of their lives. So I just want to clarify for the audience out there. I think that when Deb says remember, she's not necessarily using it in the sort of surface term that you think of. Because, we have infant and toddler professionals in our community. And the truth is most human beings don't remember those years of their lives in terms of being able to consciously remember an event. But we know, one of the many things we know that we now realize makes education not the most important thing, is that memory happens in our senses, and it happens in our bodies, and it happens in our muscles. And so we do remember them, but not in the way most people think.
Right. It's not something that when I was 2, right, they're not going to say, I did my first art project, which we hope is never a project, right? But it is because of the way we know the brain develops, motor vestibular memories in the midbrain. So when they're learning to walk, when they're learning when they're learning balance, when they're learning, that's in their memory template. Bruce Perry tells us that, right?
And when they're learning agency and autonomy and resilience and persistence and, a sense of power in the world, those do come from the sense and bodily memories from our earliest years, but not on a conscious level. But they inform our adult lives to incredible extents. Most of us are unable to see it unless you get into the world of childhood trauma and you begin working with the adults who live their lives based on childhood traumas, you start to see the way those sense and body memories drastically impair their ability to thrive as adults.
Yeah, especially if it happened before they had good language. They
Right.
can't even talk about it. It's just this visceral thing that they feel inside of them because of where it is in their brain.
Right.
And so the other thing I think is important,
Yeah,
is that folks recognize that how you interact with children, how you self-regulate and help them self-regulate is how they learn to self-regulate. But if you're not regulated and you're the teacher who's in control and screaming all the time, they're still remembering that this is how an adult handles a situation.
right.
They're going to imitate that. I mean, Bandura showed us that with the Bobo doll, right? What I see people who I have a relationship with do, I think is okay for me to do.
Right.
And so, the lessons, if we want to call them lessons, are deeply embedded in those memory templates. Right. And it's difficult because they're so deeply embedded, especially if it's in the early stages of the brain's neural connections. Boy, is it hard to switch them later, right? So
yes.
I wish teachers, facilitators, early childhood specialists, whatever we're calling them, I wish they could go back to recognize, not be worried about what parents think that they're not doing anything, but demonstrate to parents what they are doing.
Well, yes, I'm sorry, am I interrupting?
No, but
Okay.
but
Yes,
the parents don't, yeah, it's so hard because parents' experience of school in some generations was first grade.
right. That's their earliest memory of school, of education. Yeah.
So that's what they expect when their child goes to preschool, right? And so the same thing happens with students. Education means letters, numbers,
colors and shapes. Right.
That's a whole article, Richard. We should write it.
Well, there's a tremendous amount to unpack from everything that we've just been talking about. I'm going to try to hold it all in my head and get to some salient points. You mentioned those dolls. And so I want to bring the conversation, because this is a porch play chat, I want to bring it back to play. But I have a bit of I need to unwind some things in order to get there. So what I've always told my students in my college classes, or, for 30 years in trainings and sessions and all those things, is that our foundational job is simply to help children make sense of the world in which they found themselves. They showed up in this world 500, 1,000, 1,500 days ago. Hardly at all. They don't know what it's about. They're just trying to make sense of it and see who they are within it, what their place is in it. Is it safe? Is it not safe to be who they are, to do what they love, all those things? What does it mean to be a human being? Are we allowed to laugh and cry and feel joyous and be silly and all those things? They just showed up, we come to work every day because we have a job description and a paycheck, but they come to our place of work every day because some grown-up left them there for the day so they could go to work. The young children aren't there to learn. They're there to just be. We're there because we decided that they should be learning. But they don't know that. They're just 2 and 3 and showing up because someone left them there. And they, like you said, they built relationships with us. Now they know and love us. They feel safe. And so they're just being them. They didn't they didn't show up to be a student.
No.
They showed up to just get through the day and have some fun, because that's pretty much your primary motivators when you're 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and to feel safe. So I often tell people, the reason why we set out to teach, and I use that word loosely, letters, colors, and numbers and shapes, is simply because it's a part of the world. And our job is to help them make sense of the world in which they found themselves in. The world includes letters, and so we have to help them decipher them. And for the ones who are really excited to do that, yeah, we scaffold, we give them more. You want to read? Sure. I noticed that you really want to cut things with the scissors. Let's do it. I'm there for you. But that's different than making a weekly lesson plan with scissors cutting on Tuesday at 10 for everybody.
Yes.
It's a whole different thing. And so there's so much more that we have to help children make sense of than just the quote unquote academic things. What does it mean to be in a relationship? What does it mean to wait? Gratification deference. What does it mean to share when you're developmentally ready to do that? And on and on and on. So many things that are all part of our job, but that sort of get lost when people think that the primary focus of their job is to teach academics. I teach a class called Creativity in the Young Child. It's such a fun class. And as we speak, I'm teaching a summer accelerated version of that course. And so after we explore creativity in a variety of ways, what does it mean? What does it mean for young children? What's it look like? How do we provide opportunities for them to experience themselves as creative and all that? I have them make a lesson plan just to try it out. What would you come up with, given everything we've learned? If your learning objective, your behavioral learning objective is children will be provided opportunities to experience their own creativity, what would that look like? Write it as a lesson plan. So just yesterday, I was reading one of my students' lesson plans. She's a woman in her, I'm going to say 40s, who's been teaching for years and years. And the lesson plan was so lengthy and was so detailed in its learning objectives and aligned them with her state standards, with Connecticut state standards. And it was all of these literacy goals, prediction and sequencing and phonemic awareness. And all of those things are great. I'm not discounting any of those things. But, I had to respond to her and say, that's a really detailed lesson plan around literacy, but this class is about creativity.
Yeah.
I can't accept that lesson plan. And she said, and her response, which was, she's a lovely human being, and it was just her natural response, was just, well, that's what I always do. She said, we early childhood educators, we're always trying to squeeze in our the standards into any lesson plan we create. So I'm just used to packing them all in. And I thought to myself, oh, I don't want to sound insulting to her, because she's lovely and she's a great professional, I'm sure. But there's a way in which I feel sad for those children in her care, because they're missing out on what they need most by having a teacher who thinks her job is to pack in all of those lessons to make sure the students meet their state standards. And it's all just so troubling to me, because she's lovely. She thinks she's doing an excellent job. If I didn't maybe have the epiphany that I had recently, I might look at that lesson plan and think she was doing an excellent job. Probably not in this particular creativity course, but it looks like an excellent lesson plan. And most program directors or state offices of education would look at it and go, spot on. You are doing your job with excellence. You should get an award for that. Look at how much the young children are learning when they're with you. Now I just cringe at that. Yes, my job is to help them learn, but the way that occurs is through play. And this brings us back now to me, the focus of this Porch Play Chat. We know, and every bit of evidence now shows, that children don't learn anything by being talked to.
Right.
Right. Teachers will say, oh, well, I talked with them about community helpers. We talked about community helpers. That's not how young children learn. They don't learn by, they're not social constructivists. They don't learn through discussion. They're constructivists.
Mhm.
They learn through doing. And for them, doing, if it's joyous, is play.
Mhm.
So one little example of that I thought of when you were mentioning dolls was a different thing that I say to my students about dolls and puppets and all that. So children are trying to make sense of the world in which they found themselves. And one of the many things in the world is parents who argue with each other. And then the next thing the child notices is they're saying, I love you, and they're kissing and hugging those parents. How confusing must that be to see that in one moment, my mommy and daddy are so angry at each other. And then in the next moment, something's happened because now they're loving each other. So I could try to if that child were a student in my class, I could sit them down and try to explain that human phenomenon. But that's not how they learn.
No.
It's not going to be valuable for their growing understanding of the world. So that's why I have dolls in my pretend center and puppets and a dollhouse, so that in the moment, and it's why I provide ample time and all of those materials, so that when they need it, when the moment's right for them, that they need to go figure out that thing they saw over breakfast this morning, they can pick up two dolls or two finger puppets and go, I'm so mad at you because you left the seat down. Oh, yeah? Well, you didn't put the dishes in the dishwasher last night. Oh, I'm sorry. I love you. I love you too. They need to hold those fingers. They need to do that. That's how they learn, through play. When we talk about that horrible phrase, play-based learning, it doesn't look like worksheets or lessons. It looks like time where a child, in the moment that they need it, can use the materials through play toward whatever end their brain, their mind is craving in that moment.
Yes. And they're ready for it, right?
Yeah, they're ready and they choose it.
Yeah, and they choose it, and which makes it pleasurable. Not all play is pleasurable, but I mean, sometimes we fall and we hurt ourselves, but
it makes it meaningful.
It's meaningful. Yeah, that's a good word for it. I keep going back to the lesson plans because and how we've lost our way, right? I think that's the article we need to write, right? This whole assessment thing drives me crazy. We're assessing 25 things in fine motor. You don't need 25 things. You should be talking to children. You should be, observing children. You shouldn't be trying to catch them doing one of the 25 things that you have to report on. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yep.
And we're spending too much time on the wrong thing. But I often wonder, when we think about the national organizations that many of us have followed for
40, and are members of
40 years. I'm not anymore.
And
that's a whole nother story. Yes.
And dictate what our standards of excellence should be.
Yes.
They have great power, these organizations you're referencing.
Yes.
Over
and who I have noticed have been going down the wrong path for a while, right? Yes. Which is why I no longer am a member, even though I used to be a board member. It is troubling. And when you voice that to leadership, it's not heard at all. Yep. And so it's almost like we need a wake-up call with helping early childhood educators, even though we don't want to call them that, so let's call them early childhood specialists, recognize the value of what they do instead of feeling like they have to prove their value by doing something that children should be doing in second or third grade, right? And probably not doing it well in second or third grade because of the way that we are approaching the classroom.
Right.
So where do we start, Richard? I mean, I know you and I are doing it in our classrooms, but where do we start the conversation that says play is, and what is play, right? So we had this conversation yesterday in a Porch Play Chat. Let's talk about what play is. It is not rotating every 15 minutes with the things that the teacher has chosen children to do. It is
Right.
not a 30-minute block twice a day in a full day of teacher directed learning. It is not the teacher selecting what toys children will play with or what centers will be open.
Uh-huh.
It isn't any of those things.
Right.
It is following a child's lead. It is the whole room is open. Children have ample time. I mean, in my classroom, when I was a preschool teacher, we started in the beginning of the year with an hour, and by October, we were at an hour and a half twice a day, plus an hour outside morning and afternoon, and plus the period of arrival time where they could do anything they chose to do, right?
Yep.
It's that. It's not, we're going to do circle for 30 minutes, and then we're going to go to a small group activity, and then we're going to go to a large group activity, and then we're going to go outside. And then we're going to come in and we're going to have lunch and we're going to do nap. And then the god awful thing is we have to line up 20 children to go down the hallway to the bathroom to sit against the wall. I mean, really.
Yep. And line them up by gender. Yes.
Oh my goodness. And so we have to unpack each one of those myths of what a good early childhood program is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like we need a Porch Play Chat to unpack every myth. And
right.
we just talked about 10 of them, right? So
and there's more I would add if we had the time.
Oh my God, yes. So how would we unpack to give people who are in this field because they want to be in this field? We hope, right? We hope everyone wants to be there. There's plenty of jobs out there now. So hopefully you're in the field because this is where you want to be. But we need to be honest with ourselves, and we need to be advocates for children, and we need to say that sometimes what we think is doing more harm than we think it is. Right. And so we need to unpack those myths.
Yes.
That's our job, Richard. Yep. You have to figure that out.
Well, so I would build on what you just said. Again, I'm thinking about that student of mine that created that incredibly detailed lesson plan. She is a working teacher here in Connecticut. Let me start again. What I heard you say that I'm not sure, Deb, that I'm not sure you meant 100% is that this is what my brain inferred from what you said, that you were saying that it's teachers' responsibility and that it's teachers who are the cause of the problem. And so
I think it's leadership.
I know that's not what you meant. Well, right. Yeah. And that's what I wanted to say. This lovely teacher who's doing her job, she's doing her job and she's writing those lesson plans and doing her job in the way she is, because I know the Office of Early Childhood in Connecticut and the standards that they put out and the requirements for teachers to show evidence that children have met those standards in order for their program to receive much needed funding. So it's codified in her job description. It's verified and amplified in the way her supervisors support how she does her job and the expectations they have of her and the documentation she has to turn in. So there's so much out of a wonderful teacher's control in the system that creates this. Yeah,
it's leadership. And, you know, when I do professional development with directors, like there's a leadership course, and there's, you know, an administration course, and there's an HR course. In all of those leadership graduate level courses, you have to figure out what your program mission is, the philosophy is, your values, your beliefs, and then your program should reflect those. So it starts, again, leadership with embodying and lifting up in staff meetings, not just having it framed on the wall. How do we do this in this program? How do we foster a sense of independence and autonomy with young children? How do we do that in the classroom? What are you doing in your classroom that does that? So that teachers are able to, and I say this all the time, everybody in any session, when I say, how do children learn? They say through play, right?
Right.
But when we dig down, then, so what opportunities for play do children have in your program? If this is really what you believe, and there's no application, but they know it, but all these pressures that you described are influencing what they do in a classroom and it's going against everything that they know. And so again, I think it's that myth busting that, and do you know about learning stories?
Yes.
Okay. So learning stories to me are one of the answers to assessment, right? You do an observation on a child in the classroom, you make an anecdotal record. And then if it's necessary, you go to the state standards and you align everything the child just did. But you're not creating a lesson for them to meet the standards. You're doing an anecdotal observation. And then because you're forced to, you're aligning it with state standards, right? That's what leadership tells you have to do. And it is a totally different approach to assessment. You're not filling out the little bullets on the assessment form. And some states are accepting that instead of, they're accepting the learning stories instead of the other way of doing things. It was Debbie Mays who did the speaker series, who really said, and she's a family childcare provider and fabulous. And she said this, I recognized that I was too busy trying to get children to meet the standards and fill out the assessment form. And then I discovered learning stories. The other approach I use in my classroom, and I know it's almost time for us to end, but the other approach I use in my classrooms and curriculum is backward design. Yes, they have to have an objective. What do you want children to know and be able to do by the end of the lesson, right? But they don't go to an activity first. That's not where they go. They think, okay, number one, is this meaningful? Is this appropriate? And I don't even want to use developmentally appropriate anymore, because I think that has gone off the deep end as well. I think we're so far away from developmentally appropriate that I can't even use the terminology anymore. Is it appropriate for this child, this group, this class? Is it aligned with what I know about development? And then I can probably go find a creative standard if it's a creative activity and it's not going to be some crafty thing. And I can say, well, what else would children do in this? Are they going to need to collaborate with each other? So I could probably go find a social skill that they could do in a standard. And then, are they, if this is a creative art thing, are they going to be using their fingers? Maybe I could go find a fine motor standard, right? And so I can align what I want children to know and be able to do by the end of the lesson with standards. And then I can come up with the activity instead of, oh, the children love it. No, I don't want children love it. I want to know why you chose that and why you offered that and why it's a choice, not that everybody has to do it, right? It's a choice that you did. The rest of the day is play, 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 play. But maybe you have a small group and it's a choice and children can come if they choose to come. And so I don't know if that's helpful at all. I don't know if that's a way to push back against some of the stuff that we're dealing with. But I do think
One
that
way.
Yeah, it gets my students to think differently about being planned, about having a meaningful and relevant, age appropriate. I don't want to say developmentally appropriate because it should be, everything we do should be developmentally appropriate, but if the context, the
Understood.
definition has gone off the rails, and I hate that term anymore.
Well, I'm aware we're almost out of time as well. I would
Yeah.
like to leave your viewers with one thought.
Yeah.
Kind of a question to ponder, not a statement.
Mhm.
As we try to understand how we found ourselves in this situation, we early childhood specialists, professionals, the field of early childhood work. How did we get here? Why are we being what is it they do to cattle? They
Oh, yeah.
shoot.
Herded.
Yeah,
We're
why are we
herded.
being herded through down a particular chute called education? And why are we defining ourselves as the next step down from kindergarten, and now we have to get them ready for that?
Uh-huh.
And so as your listeners, your viewers ponder that, one of the things that I always do in this world as I'm trying to make sense of anything happening, my first thought when I see something on the news and I think, well, that's bizarre, why is that happening? Follow the money.
Mhm.
Understand who is benefiting from this chute that we're being put down.
Mhm.
Who profits from it, who benefits from it.
Mhm.
In a capitalist society, it would
Mhm.
be foolish not to ask oneself that question about any topic.
Mhm.
Not that capitalism is bad, but it's just saying, oh, well, it drives
It's the driver.
our
Yeah.
economy, so we need to consider it. And then upon doing that, you have to look at patriarchy. You have to understand how this incredibly female-dominated field of early childhood exists within a culture in which men have more power than women.
Mhm.
And then you look at the people who have the most power, who are deciding what the chute is we're pushed down and what standards we need to adhere to. And the more you learn about, broadly speaking, male values, and the people and the vast number of males who control our field and so many others, you start to then make sense. I start to then make sense of why we are where we're at.
Mhm.
And so, early on you asked, what are we going to do? How do we address this? How do we fix this? To me, the conversation starts there.
Mhm.
If we're going to swing away from education and towards play, which is what we know they need, we have to understand all the context of why we're here if we're ever going to change it, do something different.
Yeah. And again, that is, how did we get here is the great thing we should be writing.
Yep. Let's do
Oh
it,
my
Deb.
God. Yes, let's do it. Let's go, Richard. We can do it.
I'll have
So,
my first draft to you by 3 p.m.
okay, great. Wonderful. I can't wait. Early Childhood Exchange will print it. I know they will.
Sure.
So they will, because we do need a wake-up call. And we might need a wake-up, I don't know, hurricane. But we need something that's drastic, that shakes the foundation of where we've been,
Right.
so that we can shift into something of where we should be. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Well, you mentioned childcare exchange, just that phrase, childcare. Why is that the redheaded stepsister to preschool teachers?
Right.
Why are childcare professionals workers and teachers are something bigger and better than a worker? What's that about?
What's that about? Yes, because they don't
Telling you
value what we do.
capitalism and patriarchy.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Well, of course, as always, this has been eye-opening and inspirational
I'm glad.
and
For me too.
provocative, which I like. And so until next time, to learn more about us, please visit IPA-USA.org. Subscribe to YouTube and our Facebook page. Magically on Mondays, you get a Porch Play Chat.
Yeah.
And there are two things I want to promote at the moment. We have October 2022 face-to-face conference in San Antonio, Texas.
Right.
Amazing. I'm on the planning committee. I can tell you it's amazing. And we have a world conference in Glasgow, Scotland in June of 2023. The International Play IPA World is holding a world conference. So you'll have 23 countries of people all invested in play. In San Antonio, hopefully you'll have 300 of your best friends who all believe in play. All right. Until next time, keep on playing.
Bye.